Now that you guys saw what are the behavioral theories, that you're familiar with all what that it involves, I'm going to present you 10 suggestions for teaching, applying behavioral in the classroom. According to Skinner, it should be possible to specify the conditions leading to any act of behavior. What do you think by to specify the conditions that will have a result of the behavior?
Setting rules.
Setting rules. What else?
Use reinforcement.
Okay.
It says right there.
Remain aware that behavior is the result of particular conditions. Particular conditions can be, for example, if you're in a classroom and you give an activity to the student and they finish fast and you don't give another activity, well, what do you think is going to happen?
It's gonna be
They're going to get bored, they're going to get desperate. And that will equal to?
They will lose the focus. Interest.
Yes, but then that will equal to a good behavior or bad behavior? Bad behavior, yes. So that
You know this.
okay.
We know if I ever do that.
Use reinforcement to strengthen behavior you want to encourage. Okay? So what does it mean? Use several kinds of reinforcers so that it retains in effectiveness. In many learning situations, for example, how can we reinforcement to strengthen behavior? By using positive reinforcement like we already saw in Yesenia's slides. Positive reinforcement could be to say that good, great job to your students. That would be a positive reinforcement. And that will help to strengthen the behavior you want to encourage. Okay, number 3. Use awareness of extinction to reduce the frequency of undesirable forms of behavior. By extinction means to ignore. If you ignore a bad behavior, then the learner will notice that he or she doesn't get the attention they want by acting that way. So that would be to extinct that or to reduce the frequency of that undesirable behavior. For example, if the student wants to call your attention by, I don't know, yelling to the class or acting. Sometimes they like to bother other students. But what that happens is you will have another consequence. Can you?
But that necessarily doesn't work.
Like,
I've tried it, and
Well, it depends on the situation.
It gets
For
worse.
example, if a student is, well, that happens a lot. I read that example. I forgot to tell it, but the example is that sometimes the students are working, and if you ask a question as teacher, and sometimes they start, one student will start saying things that doesn't anything to do with the question you ask or with the class. So in that case, you need to ignore, okay? Because it's not what you want them to do. Do you have any questions?
I got your
comments?
point.
Yes.
I got your point in number 3. But what about if the students keep doing that bad behavior? I mean, turns in a worse behavior.
We will see that in.
Okay.
yeah, that one is like just something that doesn't need to modify the behavior of the student. If the student's behavior needs to be modified, then you apply other techniques.
Yes.
Okay.
This is just one technique in which you ignore the student and because he's not receiving all the attention that he wants.
I'm going to ignore the bad behavior.
Yeah,
Okay, can you? Okay, number 4, we are there for generalization, but it occurs just before the explanation to you about discrimination. polarization and discrimination.
Así le gusta la Gaby. Mondak.
Your students will tend to apply what they learn in one situation to what they perceive to be similar situations. Sometimes this is desirable. In other cases, however, it will cause problems. For example, when they learn something, they relate with another things that they already learned. For example, if they say, I saw an example about they tend to generalize they see it logical, like when they want to say it happens a lot in Europe, like if you want to say that a goose and then you say two goose or two gooses, so that will be generalizing. And if we reinforcement or even estimation, then they will notice that is not applicable, is the word. Okay, number 5. Take advantage of knowing about the impact of different reinforcement schedules to encourage persistent and permanent learning. When students first attempt to a new kind of learning, supply frequent reinforcement. They supply rewards less often. For example, when introducing new material, give a point for every correct response. Then specify that a point can be earned only if 5 questions are answered correctly. Yes?
Yes.
Consider using published program text and microcomputer programs, like Paulina said about how can we get support by the computers program. And according to published program text, it is very important to choose according to the objectives that you have or the objectives that you have for your class, the students you have to choose a good test. So that happened a lot that, well, in my experience teaching, I remember that we had a book that it had very simple activities. And I gave the students activities in the book and they finished very, very fast. So you have to choose if your program texts are according to what you are teaching. So that won't happen because then they get bored and they're like, or you have to give extra activities, okay? If that happens.
Wait.
Yes?
Where it says that microcomputers is like, you mean computers or?
Computers.
Like
Like microcomputers?
mini? Like mine?
Like little,
Microcomputer programs.
Yeah, they don't work in micro iPhones.
Oh. Not I.
Any comments or?
Questions?
No.
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 Any doubts?
Okay, number 7. No question.
Any complaints?
Any complaints? No.
Why?
Okay, this is a quote I like it very much because delayed feedback may be more effective than immediate feedback. I found it very interesting because I read about and that applies when the task that you teach your students is very complex. It's recommended to use delayed feedback.
wait a little bit.
And there was I read an experiment that a university did about this, and they found out by that research that it's true that delayed feedback is more effective when the tasks are very complex. That is very applicable in university students. Okay?
Ready?
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, number 7.
I already did it.
Is it you doing?
Uh-oh.
What?
Hi, man.
There it comes.
Computers are.
Hi.
I made you broke down the
Broke it.
computer.
Broke it.
Right there.
Okay,
I found it.
number 7, use program to teaching by describing terminal behavior, organizing what is to be learned, and providing feedback. I remember that that's related with the objectives. I saw it in a presentation before, I don't remember which, but about the
You
objectives.
should remember.
Okay, this has to do with what you talked about, what you mentioned, that you have to be organized with the objectives that you're going to, or that you want to have as a result on your teaching program. In order, for example, in order to learn how to read, primary grade pupils need to master letters and words. So that will be programmed to teach it. And in order to do mathematical problems, they should learn numbers and how to sum. And okay, number 8. When students most struggle to concentrate on material that is not intrinsically interesting, use a special forms of reform to motivate them to persevere. You may sometimes find it essential to use techniques of behavior modification to help students stick to a task. To reduce the tendency of pupils to engage in understandable forms of behavior, first try with holding reinforcement and calling attention to reward that will follow completion of tasks. If that does not work, consider the possibility of taking away a privilege or resorting to punishment. As Juan was saying, that if the extinction doesn't work, but that the punishment, we're not talking about corporal punishment, like the teacher was saying. It's like, for example, the timeout, when the learner, the student doesn't behave the way you respect it, or the way he was asked to act. Then you can, timeout means that take him from the room for 5 minutes, or sit in the corner, for example, that would be a punishment. Or if he's bothering another student, you need to yes, you can suspend it from classes. That would be a punishment too. It doesn't have to be physical.
Remember that all of this is related to behavioral modification.
Yes.
Alright? And how can you modify the behavior? Applying different techniques.
Yes.
Alright?
Okay. Chris,
And the last one.
the last suggestion. Remember the basic processes of observation and learning, and make effective use of observation and imitation. Remember what were the basic processes of observational learning?
No, can you remind us?
Yeah.
Attention.